John Flaherty.
Good afternoon, members. My name is John Flaherty. I'm here representing Grossmart, Rhode Island. I wanted to start just briefly touching on a point that Mr. Melillo brought up about the shortage. Because one of the things that's on the agenda today is your annual financial plan. And there's two things about it that are somewhat concerning to me from the perspective of the operator shortage. The first is, and although it's great to see the deficit number come down, but it's relying on some things that I think are counterproductive. One of which is it relies on not filling 40 operator positions. It's a lot of positions. The second thing that concerns me is that it relies on not making the full OPEB payment, which I think is getting us into trouble. We've been there before, and the agencies come back from that, and I think it would be a mistake to allow that to happen again. Now I want to move on. I spoke before you last August here in this room, and I raised a concern. And the concern was about statements, comments that have been made public that undermine the public trust and the public confidence in this agency, unfairly so. And unfortunately, those have continued. So I feel compelled to come before you this afternoon, and present some evidence to refute some of those comments. And I'll be as brief as I can. So
well, you're a good part of the way into your 3 minutes. So if you could,
maybe if there's somebody who might want to extend their time to me, and that would be.
This is in Congress. I'll stand it.
So first, this is from August of 2023, Providence Business News. In Alvidi's first meeting as chair last month, he criticized RIPTA for what he described as a lack of accountability and direction. Criticized the agency for seeking more funding without a plan to reform the service. And then, quote, I think what builds taxpayers' confidence is first, an agency operating in a proper manner that breeds confidence. This was from the Providence Journal. But now he argues the decision by the General Assembly leaders and Governor McKee not to provide funding says it needs that RIPTA says it needs is itself proof the transit operator is being run badly. Then more recently from the Rhode Island Current, this is from the last board meeting. The chairman is quoted as saying, everything is not okay. They're okay in our eyes, maybe, but they're not okay in the eyes of the public, the legislature, the congressional delegation, the governor. And what I say to that is, there was a quote in the Boston Globe from Governor McKee, echoing previous statements, said Monday that he still maintains confidence in navigation's ability to manage RIPTA's challenges. As far as the congressional delegation goes, this was from January when Senator Reid led the charge for a $5 million action plan grant, where he said this federal funding will help. I appreciate the steps RIPTA is taking with community partners to make our transportation network safer. Senator Whitehouse, I'm grateful to RIPTA for spearheading this statewide effort. So clearly, there's an inconsistency in some of these statements. This was from the Boston Globe, April 2013. Mr. Crowley referred to the board's lack of proactive action over the years that has led to this fiscal cliff that we are facing. And if we're going to turn the agency's finances around, the board needs to be the one to set the policy. I will just point out that it's been well documented that the issue of the fiscal cliff is affecting transit agencies across the country. This is from RIPTA, the Public Transportation Professional Association. This is from Transportation for America. Most agencies are experiencing workforce shortages. 2/3 of transit agencies predict budget deficits by 2025. So I think that the single most dangerous thing that's happening is this undermining of public confidence, because it's not going to instill confidence in the General Assembly or the governor. if they think that there's a conflict over this. And I don't think there is a conflict. When I look at the data, I don't see that conflict. There was a lot of talk about RIPTA doesn't have a plan. They have a plan. It's called the Transit Master Plan. They haven't a clue where the funding's going to come from. Some of you may be familiar with this document. 74-page document was published in January of 2021, 1 month after the Transit Master Plan was adopted, outlining all of the funding opportunities for funding the Transit Master Plan. In addition, there's been criticisms that the agency hasn't demonstrated the benefit to the legislature or to the people. This is a piece that was published along with the Transit Master Plan, and it's called Program Benefits. It outlines all of the benefits that would be achieved by implementing the Transit Master Plan, which are substantial. So these are some of the things. I referred before to the stack of reviews that have been conducted in the past by the legislature, by previous governors, by outside auditors that have looked at this agency, and the conclusion has largely been the same, that this agency is reasonably well run. It's not perfect, but it's generally well run, and it outperforms its peers in just about every performance metric. So this notion that this agency is broken has got to stop. And I've got more evidence, but I think I've run out of time. So I will. But the last thing I want to say is about the costs to implement this plan. It has been detailed in fine-grained detail. We know what it's going to cost year by year from an operating standpoint and from a capital standpoint. Yet statements in the news media suggest that that's not the case. And so I present that to you as evidence. It was mentioned at a previous board meeting that we have an agency that's serving 3% of the population. And we look at other urbanized states, and they're between 15 and 20%. I've got the data here from the census. That is not true. We've looked at the other states. Would we like to see 3% increase? Of course we would. That's only going to happen if we provide the level of service that's going to attract people who have a choice about how they get someplace. And if it's going to take you 4 times as long to get where you're going, you have access to a car, you're going to use the car. So we're not going to see that number increase until we make the investments in the transit system. So I will stop there. I've exceeded my time. Thank you for your efforts there in this agency, and I hope that we can really come together finally and get on with addressing this fiscal challenge. By the way, I don't think that that's something that the agency, it's their responsibility. They've done the spade work. They've put together all of the options. Now it's a leadership choice, and that's the governor and with legislative leaders to choose which are the funding options they believe are most palatable and are most executable. It's not for the agency to say, we think you should choose this one or choose that one. So thank you very much.
Are you finished?
Well, as much as I'm going to be with my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Larry, have you read the 2024, 2029 financial plan?
I have not.
Okay, have you read the 2023, 2028 financial plan?
Yes.
What was the proposal for funding in that plan?
I don't recall what the funding proposal was.
All right, did you read the plan before that?
I've read,
2028.
Mr. Crowley,
I asked the question.
you can ask the question, but I'm telling you, I have read all of the funding options, not only that came from this report, but that came from previous Senate study commissions on transportation funding, came from the
2011,
Blue Ribbon panel.
2008, that plan.
Yes,
You know what the proposal was in 2022?
tell me.
A Blue Ribbon Commission.
Yeah.
Did that
What
happen?
study?
Did it happen?
When? There was a Blue Ribbon, I've got the
It
report
happened
right
in
here.
2008.
Yes, I've got it right here.
Okay. The 2022 plan from RIPTA, you know what it called for as a proposal to deal with the funding plan?
Tell me.
You read the report.
I've
You
read,
have all the data.
yeah,
It called for a Blue Ribbon Commission. Did it happen?
another Blue Ribbon Commission or the
Yeah.
first one in 2008?
No.
I don't believe it's happened, but I don't also think that we need another study commission. We've got all of the data that's been done.
I absolutely
previous-
agree. Then why did
previous
RIPTA
days.
make that as their proposal, another study?
I'm not gonna defend whether, look, I've said, I don't think the agency is perfect. I'm not here to nitpick those minute details. What I'm saying is we all know there's a funding challenge. We know what the opportunities are for meeting that need.
The proposal in the transit master plan to fund it.
There's a whole list.
There's a whole list of them.
The whole list.
There's no proposal though, right?
This document identifies any number of proposals, from tolling the roads to, you name it. There's value capture. There's a whole list in here. But, and they actually say where they're being used, what other communities. They include some commentary on whether that option is popular with the public or not popular with the public. So those options are out there, and that's for the governor and for legislative leaders to pick and choose what they think is the right
I'm
choice.
sorry, I fundamentally disagree with you on that point, and I think the approach that your organization has taken after they've taken tens of thousands of dollars from the administration over the last several years, I fundamentally disagree with you and your approach on that. I think it's incumbent upon the agency to offer the board suggested proposals that we could support or not support, so that we could go together to the General Assembly and the state leaders for how we could fund this organization to make sure that it meets its mandate. And I think the fact that you don't want to take responsibility and don't want to have the agency have responsibility is one of the things that needs to be shaken up.
I disagree. We can agree to disagree, because I don't think that this board's responsibility to choose tolling over sales tax. I don't think it's the role for this board.
But we
I think
can
it's the role for
we
the
can definitely
board
have an
to
opinion.
identify the need, and then bring the options to the leadership, the governor and the assembly, to make the choice of how they want to fund it.
You're welcome. Any other board members have any questions for Mr. Murray? Get really engaged. I know that one of the subjects I came up last week was forming a subcommittee and I think the board in a split vote decided to not implement that, and instead take on the responsibility ourselves to get in and do more detailed, active participation in the budgeting and review of operations. And since that seems to be where the board wants to go, and I'm wondering if this is the kind of issue, particularly this year, where, you know, it really is the turning point. Is this the year that we begin to turn the tide with legislature, begin to engage effectively as board members, and to call in a wider range of strategies to affect change in the way that we're funded by the legislature and the governor. And the kinds of questions that I have really go very deeply into those areas in this budget. I'll just open it up for other,
Yeah, I would think that it would behoove us as a board if we did have a special meeting to talk about the financial plan. I have a number of questions as well. If possible, I think it might also be helpful for the board to have, in addition to a public session, but an executive session, talk about the financial plan, because I have asked Chris and Scott some questions over email over the last couple of days. Scott gave me a quick answer to some of those things, as did Chris, which I appreciate greatly. I think the follow-ups might be concerning legal strategy or political strategy to enforce those, which might be better held in executive session, so that we can consider ideas freely that may or may not have any merit, but might not want to be revealed until we as a board find consensus on what those strategies are, if that makes sense.
yeah, you know, it makes sense. And I'll tell you why that makes sense. I think I've heard some comments by the public that, you know, there are certain members on the board, or myself included, that are overly critical sometimes in this kind of a forum, it comes out that way, mainly because we're asking questions maybe that are either no answers for yet. But I think the questions that we had, and the additional questions I have here, require, in order for a board to be entirely behind a financial plan, and for us to engage with other stakeholders that we may all be able to engage with, we need to have more of an intimate familiarity with the push and shove of many of the line items here, so that we have a higher level of understanding and we can engage better with the legislature, the governor, and other stakeholders that we might want to bring into the process here. And that's where I think my comments have been misconstrued in some cases as being derogatory or critical. In fact, the process of engaging with the government to affect change in funding for something which there is no funding right now involves much more than just submitting a document like this and asking in the opening remark that it be fully funded. It requires a much wider strategy, political, legal, financial, and planning. Not only in presenting the document, but in presenting ideas that will engage the support of the people who fund this document. And that's what we're looking to do.